Multiverse, 616 main universe. Su Chen has been in this world for a while, and her body is like stepping back in time, returning to her 16-year-old age, but changing her identity from an orphanage. It's the Marvel Universe. Just knowing the TV news has made Su Chen sure of the origin of this world. Stark Group stock is rising again. Tony Stark will create a new wealth myth. The problem of malignant events of mutants is becoming more and more obvious. Experts say that the X gene of mutants is a symptom of a disease, and the country needs to strengthen supervision. Stark Group. Mutant. Without further ado, this must be the Marvel Universe. Su Chen has dabbled in some Marvel works, whether it is the movie universe, the 616 main universe in the comics, or other single universes, all of which are very dangerous without exception. The big event of restarting the universe is enough to make people feel alarmed, and the snap of Thanos' fingers is the best proof. Then came the question, how to avoid the snap of Thanos' fingers that wiped out half of the life in the universe in the future. Could it be that you can't hit your head with a 50% chance of hitting it purely by luck? Like a sword of Damocles hanging over his head, Su Chen said it was impossible not to panic. In this world, only by becoming stronger can one live in peace. So far, the golden finger has not been awakened. There is also no system that is common in online texts. Su Chen frowned. However, inexplicably, he always felt that there was a power awakening in his body. He seems to be some sort of supernatural being, with innate powers. But no matter how you look at it, it seems a little weak. After all, it seems that the strength of the psychic power, born from the body, can only slightly blow up a piece of paper on a table. A bit. Too weak. This concept has ushered in an earth-shaking change after half a month. That day, Su Chen, who takes classes at a community school, listens with peace of mind below. But it didn't take long. The noisy and incomparably numerous words poured into Su Chen's ears, the sound of ants walking, the sound of the wings of mosquitoes shaking outside the window. It was very detailed. In addition, even the innermost words of all the nearby students were read. This is clearly the ability to read minds. For a time, he heard too many words. Su Chen, who couldn't find the switch button, couldn't isolate all the complicated sounds. Under such torture, some blue veins appeared on his face, and cold sweat kept falling from his forehead. Everyone's patience has a limit. Stop. When he couldn't bear it any longer, Su Chen made a grumbling voice mixed with anger, and accidentally caused a huge sensation. With this low voice, with him as the center, all the teachers and students around him lost consciousness and lay down on the table almost in shock. Even the side windows were hit and shattered directly. I have to say, Su Chen's low roar was so refreshing, and the noisy voice could not be heard. But it also caused a lot of trouble, because the recitations from other classrooms outside the corridor all disappeared. Su Chen walked out numbly, and as soon as he saw it, every classroom was a pile of comatose and collapsed figures. When he walked to the school square, he finally found some figures that could still move on the ground. Mutant. You're a mutant. Many school teachers and students who escaped this catastrophe were paralyzed on the ground, their eyes widened, and their right hand tremblingly pointed at Su Chen. The terrified expression and the paralyzed posture almost fully explained the meaning of terrified. You know, the whole world is still in a period of severe discrimination against mutants. Generally speaking, most parents will collapse when they find out that their children are mutants. The X gene of mutants has been rendered by the whole society as a disease, a terrible severe disease that cannot be cured and causes great harm to society at all times. Once mutant children with supernatural powers are discovered, the vast majority are sent to some sort of institution. Su Chen, who suddenly lost control of his superpower, was also a little confused when his power was awakened. His biological parents have long since passed away, and now he is only fostered in an orphanage, studying at a cheap community school, and it would be fantastic to expect others to come forward to settle this matter. Just run away. He didn't want to be sent to some kind of dark institution to be an experimental guinea pig. And he had long planned to leave here after getting familiar with the environment. Gone. Su Chen spread his hands, ignored these people, and left in front of him without looking at them. The two security guards of the community school swallowed their saliva. They were able-bodied and could easily grasp a child, but in this situation, they were stunned and did not dare to make trouble. Just as some people not far away heard the sound, the moment someone even took out their mobile phone and pressed the alarm call, a majestic spiritual force descended over the entire school. At this moment, all the people who could move around were frozen, as if the pause button was pressed on the movie screen, and they could not move directly. Son, we will help you. Please wait for us for 3 minutes at the entrance of the supermarket outside the community school. Along with it came a word of goodwill. He quickly introduced his origins, Professor X Charles. Professor X Charles. This is the famous mutant leader, the master of the mind. Compared with Magneto, who is determined to fight to the death with humans, Professor Charles is dedicated to integrating mutants into the human family. The former can be said to be hawks, while the latter are doves. In any case, Professor X Charles's mansion is definitely a good place for Su Chen now. At least he doesn't have to think about where he will spend the night when he is going to run away alone. Less than 3 minutes. Wrong. Counting the time it took to set off and land, it took less than a minute, and the Blackbird fighter jet that set off from Xavier Academy for Gifted Boys had already parked on the vast playground of the community school. The whole body is black, and the smooth and slender lines all demonstrate the supersonic performance of this supersonic fighter. Coupled with the stealth smearing technology, Su Chen, a military fan, took a second look. So fast. Su Chen said with emotion. However, he also knew that the Mutant Academy was located in Westchester County, which belonged to the same city as Queens, and was geographically very close. The hatch of the Blackbird fighter opened, and the gangway also fell, and a woman in a red trench coat came into view. She still loves wearing red clothes so much. With red waist-length hair and a red dress, it is similar to the dress in the movie. Obviously, this is the Phoenix Nukin Ge Lei. Of course, the Phoenix girl in front of her is much younger than in the movie. Slim, and the last trace of childishness faded between her eyebrows and eyes, similar to the image of a young girl who has just entered college. It's not too late, let's go. Qin Ge Lei, who came to pick him up, took Su Chen away. The people around them were completely indifferent, and even their eyes couldn't move 1 or 2 times. This is not the ability to stop time, nor is real time affected. It was the incoming spiritual power that stopped these people's somatosensory time, and their consciousness became blank. Professor X Charles once showed in the movie that a thought movement made hundreds of people stop feeling time and let them walk freely. Now, with the help of the brainwave intensifier, his psychic ability has been greatly enhanced, so that he can control a group of people from a distance. You don't have to worry about being targeted by military agencies. Don't worry. The people in this school will forget any memory about you, and they will forget the movement caused by your ability awakening. The Phoenix girl, pacified, the little boy. Qin Ge Lei, who has no ability to run wild and become a black phoenix, is naturally a kind person who is gentle and approachable. But what surprised her was that the little boy looked more stable and calm than children of the same age. She didn't think much about it, and she didn't use her mental ability to force her mind to read. Like Professor Charles, Qin Ge Lei has always abided by the rules of respecting the privacy of others, and will never forcibly open the minds of others. In addition, this little boy's ability seems to belong to the same spiritual realm as hers. The movement caused by the awakening just now is not small, and it is much more difficult than ordinary people to read minds. Sit tight. The X-Men beast, Hank in the cockpit waved his hand, and the plane took off quickly, and disappeared without a trace after entering stealth mode. Westchester County. Xavier Academy for Gifted Boys. At the moment when the Blackbird fighter plane landed, a calm lake in the manor suddenly fell down, revealing the underground base hidden behind it. Welcome to Xavier Academy. It's all your compatriots here. This is where you study and live in the future. Believe me, there is no environment outside that can compare to this manor. After getting off the plane, Beast Hank said. He was covered in blue hair and looked like a beast, and when he received his little compatriots in the past, he could not help but arouse a trace of fear. Su Chen had a friendly face without fear at all, especially after learning that his parents had long since passed away. The mutant was inevitably enthusiastic, and the chatter was opened at once. You're very lucky. Professor Charles doesn't use the brainwave intensifier all the time, so you can be able to Su Xing at that moment. It can be said to be very lucky. Correct. Your ability is very good. After a few years, you may not have the opportunity to join the X-Men. Professor X has always been committed to serving as a bridge between humans and mutants, but he is not a pedantic person. Without his own armed forces, he is definitely a lamb to be slaughtered. So long ago he taught the hated mutants how to use their innate powers. One of the best is known as the X-Men. This evaluation of the beast is not too high. At least the other students he personally received had not given the opportunity to be promoted to the X-Men. Let's go. I will take you to see Professor X first. After a night's rest, I will personally evaluate your ability tomorrow. As a professional scientific researcher, the Beast will naturally judge Su Chen's ability from the perspective of rigorous observation. As for Qin Ji Lei, she was stunned for a moment, but after a moment she felt that the Beast was right. Really? Qin Greedo glanced at Su Chen, and at the beginning of the awakening of his ability, he could inexplicably put most of the school's teachers and students into a deep sleep. No matter how you look at it, it should not be underestimated. Maybe in the next strength evaluation, there will be a strength close to the Omega level. Omega level. This is the highest evaluation, which means that those with unlimited potential and unlimited future mutant abilities can even be regarded as the ultimate threat by human beings. Looking at the entire X-Men, there are only a handful of them. Only 14 mutants are recognized in the official comics. Not long after the Blackbird fighter picked up Su Chen, a whoosh sounded, a gust of wind blew, and then quickly turned into a figure and appeared outside the community school. This is a lady, named Callisto, nicknamed Night Lady. Half a year ago, she was the leader of a small group of wandering mutants. Now under the rapid expansion of Magneto, the entire group has been annexed into the Brotherhood of Mutants. As a person who evaluates the ability of other mutants with ultra-high movement speed and perception, the Night Girl has been acting as Magneto's radar for half a year, screening him for good seedlings of the Brotherhood. It's a pity that she came a step slower today. Damn, it was taken away by the X-Men in advance. A young child is best nurtured and shaped into what Magneto aspires to be. What's more, the sensed child is so powerful. Tell your Excellency Magneto, the kid who was taken away is very strong. I can sense it, it must be level 5. The highest level in my rating. As for his ability, I'm really sorry, I can't find any words to describe his ability now. All I can say is, it's as deep as the ocean, and it's as impenetrable. In this short period of time, Su Chen didn't know that he had been labeled as promising by the two women. After a while, the group walked all the way from the underwater apron to the underground base. Before entering the Xavier Gifted Boys Academy, you naturally need to fill in a personal enrollment information. Since there are no parents, it saves a lot of time dealing with guardians. Of course, according to past experience, when the X-Men negotiated with these parents, they were eager to send their children to this mutant school. The X-Men have the status of the #1 superhero organization in society, and even in peace, we will do our job well. With our years of experience, young mutant children will learn how to master their abilities and defend the rights of all, mutants and humans alike. Su Chen glanced at the form, which explained the school's philosophy as much as possible. The inscription shows the names of 3 people. Leader, Storm. Faculty Director, Henry McCoy. Headmaster, Charles Xavier. You are welcome. Just then, a voice came from the side. Su Chen soon saw the old man in a wheelchair. Charles Francis Xavier. The mutant leader was sitting in a wheelchair like this, with a kind and peaceful demeanor full of goodwill. The demeanor of the whole person does not show any dejection in the twilight years, but is full of wisdom. I'm Professor Charles and the headmaster of this mutant academy. Maybe you've heard my name outside. I promise that you will be free from all discrimination and all injustice here. You can acquire the same knowledge here, and even the mutant abilities that are hated by the outside world will be tempered in this academy. As for the expectations of your cultivation, I only hope that you can help more people in the future, that's all. Professor Charles said a lot of words earnestly, showing sincerity. The Phoenix girl gave him a surprised look, but she said a lot to the other new students. But it is no wonder that it is indeed a rare good seedling to be able to burst out such power at the beginning of the awakening out of control. You don't need to be nervous. As a mutant in the spiritual realm, I will not spy on anyone's privacy, which is impolite and immoral. So I also hope that you can restrain yourself. Professor Charles could see some of Su Chen's nervousness. After all, Su Chen, who is a traveler, is of course afraid of being seen through the secrets of his past. But his worries were superfluous. At first, Professor Charles was not such a person. Second, for a person who has awakened the ability of the spiritual realm, forcibly reading his memory is undoubtedly holding a shovel and forcibly prying open other people's heads. Heard. Su Chen smiled. Facing the other party's expectations, he said without hesitation, of course, the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. As soon as these words fell, Professor Charles was slightly taken aback. There is a lot of power hidden in these simple words. To put it simply and concisely, it is unexpected to have such a great sense of responsibility at such a young age. Thank you, Spider-Man. Uncle. This Marvel's classic quote is a bad street, but Su Chen is enough to fool people. At the same time, outside the door, There are heads poking their heads looking at the scene inside. This is the Mutant Academy kid. Some people's faces are somewhat familiar, and at first glance they are the future X-Men. Fireman, Iceman, and the young man with strong body and steel texture. At first glance, they are Colossus. So handsome. A little girl couldn't hold back the excitement in her heart and cried out happily. Shallow. Burning John shook his head, showing some disdain for the girl. Compared with appearance, he is more concerned about the opponent's ability. It should be a very strong ability to make the professor and the Phoenix girl value it so much. Do you think he will have a 4th level in the future? Levels 1 to 5 are a privately popular evaluation system in their academy. It is said that it was passed down from the underground mutant community outside. Generally speaking, the higher the level, the more powerful it is. Hard to say, but he's definitely not as good as me. Iceman is extremely arrogant, he raised his chin, and he also has the capital to be proud of. After all, he has a high probability of booking the X-Men quota before he graduates, but his ability is not bad. Humph. Burning Man is not happy with Iceman's arrogance. The attributes of the two collided and their abilities collided. It is conceivable that they often collide. However, the two were young, and apart from the time they quarreled, the two often stayed together, and their relationship was quite good. In the face of Su Chen, who was recruited by the professor, both in terms of appearance and ability, he gave the brothers a competitive mentality. In this way, the meeting with Professor Charles was very pleasant, and Su Chen also left a good impression on him. Under the leadership of Phoenix Girl, he also met with many students from other colleges and briefly introduced himself. Then, he was assigned a single dormitory. I have to say that the teaching hardware of Xavier Gifted Boys Academy is really top-notch. After all, it is also a college converted from a luxury manor, which is tens of thousands of times more comfortable than the orphanage and community school where Su Chen stayed. With a comfortable environment, at least you don't have to run around. The most important thing right now is the ability. Su Chen, lying on her back on a brand new cotton couch, needs to figure out her ability to awaken. He has no system and cannot quantify specific values. So everything needs to be explored by yourself. Read minds. Oral surge, as well as think power. Su Chen recalled the scene where he ran rampant in the classroom during the day. At that time, his sensory abilities suddenly surged, and he could hear a wider sound, even the rustling of mosquitoes outside the wall, and finally even further heard the inner voice of other people. While the feeling is strengthened, it also inexplicably brings the ability to read minds. This should be a further expansion of the spiritual realm. After all, I had a very weak telekinetic ability from the very beginning. But after running out of control during the day and knocking out most of the entire school, Su Chen already felt that the hazy confinement in his mind had disappeared. Just like this. Come. I saw Su Chen waved his hand gently, and a mineral water bottle placed on the table was immediately pulled by an invisible force, drawing a beautiful arc and flying into Su Chen's palm. Good. He sighed secretly, but tried some more difficult operations. Su Chen frowned slightly, trying to concentrate his thoughts. Less than 3 seconds. A slight tremor resounded throughout the house, and then, all the objects on the table, even the table itself, and all the chairs that had not been fixed, all floated into the air. The cotton couch under Su Chen and his body were also suspended. This result was beyond his expectations, so that the joy on his face could not be concealed. You must know that before the day, his weak telekinetic power would blow the girl's skirt at most, and its power was lacking. Now, after running out of control and breaking the bottleneck, Su Chen opened a new door and came to a new world. Hey! At this moment, the bedroom door was directly knocked several times, and then a burly figure slammed open the door. Is the beast? You? The beast looked at the things floating in the house in front of him, and his expression changed slightly. He happened to pass by the corridor and heard a lot of movement inside, and thought that something had happened to this newcomer, and that he was going to lose control again. Like this mutant in the spiritual realm, at the beginning of the awakening of the ability, the probability of losing control is not small. At least when Qin Ji Lei first came to school, it was not less troublesome. But this young man in front of me seems to have made me think too much. Don't worry, it's fine. Su Chen, who was lying on his back on the cotton couch, waved his hand, letting everything in suspension slowly return to the ground. I just want to try out what I can do, and it looks good so far. Su Chen spread his hands, indicating that nothing happened. It's fine. The beast gently closed the door, and just after taking a few steps, the more he thought about it, the more wrong it became. The speed at which this kid has mastered his abilities is too fast. As the current school director and a rigorous scientist, he has observed an unknown number of mutant children. Know that very few children are able to master their abilities quickly after awakening. A very exaggerated statistic is that there are even many mutants who can't turn their abilities on and off throughout their lives. In fact, Beast himself just couldn't find the right switch to turn the burly monster body back into a human. Colossus is also an example, unable to change its appearance on its own. Even the very good and excellent Cyclops Scott couldn't control the laser ability of his eyes all his life, and could only use special glasses as an adjustment switch. This is one of the reasons why outsiders and even officials attack mutants as a disease. Guys like Su Chen who can get started quickly and master themselves are indeed very rare. Qin Ge Lei, many years ago, has spent a lot of effort. Really a good seedling. In this way, the Beast is looking forward to the result of the opponent's ability test tomorrow. Every new student entering the school must go through a systematic test, so that they can cultivate their abilities scientifically and correctly. Considering that Su Chen just broke out of control in broad daylight, he did not detect and observe it in the first place. The next day, Su Chen, who woke up early in the morning, didn't have a formal class. After breakfast, he went directly to the research room under the leadership of Qin Gele. After body disinfection, Su Chen walked in. The magnificent white background space looks spotless. Draw a tube of blood. Test a few hairs. View bone age. Full body scan. The previous physical examination items are very simple. Do you know what the characteristics of a mutant are? It's the X gene. Qin Gele's family has long since disappeared. After graduating half a year, she chose to stay in school and is still working as an assistant in the research room. The X gene contains all the evolutionary genetic code and also determines the specific abilities of our mutants. But you know what? The X gene of mutants is not unique. There is also an X gene in the genetic code of most humans, but we express it dominantly, and they express it recessively. You may not understand, but I just want to tell you the fact that we are not much different from humans, and the outside world's accusations against us are completely unreasonable. Because we are a family. Qin's lecture is interesting. It can be seen that she intentionally or unintentionally instilled in Su Chen the awareness of living together with human beings, and it is no wonder that Qin Ge Lei also became a teacher in the future. At this moment, Qin Ge Lei's expression changed slightly. Because the test report has come out. What? Your X gene only expresses a part of the ability, which? This may mean that you will have multiple abilities in the future. Looking at the entire mutant race, mutants who can obtain more than 2 abilities are very rare. Omega level. This is the veritable Omega class, which means the infinite potential of the individual. The future is bright, and it is the ultimate threat. Wrong. Qin Gri was shocked. If the Phoenix girl just now was just surprised, now she is completely out of control, and even Su Chen was startled by her face. Beast. I need you to come and check this report right away. Phoenix girl also seemed to feel Su Chen's wink. She breathed a sigh of relief, looked at Su Chen with complicated eyes and said, I have to say, you are very special. Not only the X gene, the vitality of your body cells is far beyond the standard of ordinary people. Even your other genes are extremely active, and the speed of mutation and evolution is very fast, not as silent as others. It probably means that even if you're not a mutant, you're still a supernatural being. You are so special. As we all know, a person's height and appearance are determined by genetics. The X gene in mutants' minds is the key to their abilities. Innate ability, random mutation, no one can accurately understand what ability the X gene will bring. Someone can't switch normally, and the ability is always on. Because of this, the appearance has changed greatly and cannot be recovered. Some eyes cannot see people normally, or even touch others. Under such a major genetic defect, no one can guarantee that the mutation of the X gene will definitely move in a good direction. But today, Qin Ge Lei saw a magical scene. It's amazing. Su Chen's X gene does not have any major defects, does not affect appearance, does not hinder life, and can be turned on freely. More importantly, it is only a part of it, and there is still more room for activation. This means that Su Chen's own capabilities still have more to be tapped. It's not the most outrageous thing though. Qin Ge Lei found that the X gene of this young man did not show the psychic characteristics at all, which was another innate talent of his own. The superpowers in this world are naturally not monopolized by mutants. On the contrary, very few supernatural powers are active in this arena, and it is the first time that he has both. Beast. You need to see this cell. Seeing the beast McCoy walk into the research room, Jean Grey immediately gave up her observation position. What's the situation? The beast saw Qin Ge Lei's serious appearance, and his curiosity suddenly came up. It's just that when the beast brought its eyeballs closer to the microscope, it didn't find any uniqueness of this gene cell. Just like ordinary people, the gene fragments are silent, without much expression, showing any characteristics. The blood cell samples also lacked viability, and there was nothing unusual about the rate of proliferation and mutation. No problem, Qin. The beast was suddenly confused. It's not right. Qin Grey frowned, but when she observed the cell data again, she immediately got the same result as the beast. There is no abnormality in the genetic cell data. Wrong. All of a sudden, Qin Ge Lei only felt a tingling in her scalp. She confirmed and observed again and again, and immediately realized that the second observation was different from the first observation. She herself has an outstanding ability in the spiritual field. How can she have such behavior as memory disorder? She couldn't possibly remember wrong. Apparently. The genes in the cellular self have changed suddenly. The gene fragments were suddenly silent, and the blood cells were suddenly devoid of vitality. Thinking about it carefully, maybe even the gene cell itself knows that someone is observing, and even does not want to be further studied, so the self consciously disappears. Once such a bold imaginary idea arises, it cannot be wiped out. In addition, there is a certain probability that his own genetic cells are ordinary, and the rapid mutation observed before is abnormal. In any case, she couldn't come up with an answer. Qin Ge Lei glanced at Su Chen with a complicated expression, and said nothing more. It seems that the special person in this world is not only her, but also this teenager. As expected. It's Omega level. The beast McCoy didn't delve too much into Qin Grey's previous words, and only thought that the other party had made a mistake in the experimental data. After all, in his opinion, Qin was just a little girl who had just graduated. Without pondering other gene cell data, McCoy directly gave the X gene a rating. Unlimited potential, promising future, your talent looks at the entire mutant, and it is also the top. Certainly. Young man, don't be too happy. Omega level is indeed very strong, but it only refers to talent and potential, that is to say, how your future grows depends on whether you can fulfill your talent. If the X gene fragment is no longer expressed in the future, it is also possible to become stronger, which requires the careful teaching of the teachers. Say it. The beast boasted and patted his heart, a feeling of being wrapped around himself. Besides that, there are quite a few Omega-level existences. The assistant Qin in front of you is one, and Iceman is an Omega too. Iceman. The reason for such a high rating is that everything on Earth is a particle in motion, and when the Iceman's freezing power is enough to penetrate the microscopic level, then time will stand still. In theory, Iceman could gain the ultimate power to freeze everything, including time. But a theory is a theory after all, and whether it can reach the ceiling depends purely on acquired efforts. Before that, many Omega-level mutants may not be able to fulfill their talents in their entire lives. Su Chen knew it in his heart and didn't study it too closely. Compared with the Omega level, after the medical examination results, he was more concerned about Qin Grey's previous words. It seems he is very special. His other genes and cells seem to be more complex and mysterious than the mutant's X gene, so that the Phoenix girl feels a little weird. The two of them didn't get into it. Thank you, Assistant Professor Qin. Su Chen is also called Phoenix Girl by this honorary title. The Qin Ge Lei in front of her was only about 3 or 4 years older than him, and there was a hint of childishness on her quiet and gentle face, and her clothes were no different from that of a young girl. So my body is fine. Su Chen mentioned something intentionally or unintentionally. Don't think too much about it. Your physical health is very good. I don't know how your own cells are, but it will definitely be beneficial to you. Qin Ge Lei laughed. You may be special. But I'm more special than you. You have to grow up well and be a good boy. I will take good care of you. Qin Ge Lei said in a very dogmatic manner. No matter how you look at it, Qin Ge Lei in front of her has the meaning of a future teacher. At this time, she is somewhat enlightened. And Qin Ge Lei does have the confidence to give others a clue. Because she is the host of the power of the Phoenix. To say that among the most dangerous events in the Marvel world, there are many cosmic crises caused by this Phoenix host. Iceman, an Omega-level existence, has no chance of winning compared to Qin. Compared with her own loss of control, if this woman loses control, it will be a real trouble. The result is out. It's an Omega class. Many students at Xavier Academy of Gifted Boys have been waiting for this result for a long time. At least throughout the day course, most students are very concerned about the level of this exceptionally recruited student. After all, the Mutant Academy does not only teach textbook knowledge on paper, but the actual combat and training of mutants is also one of the most important courses. Good guy, another Omega level genius. I heard that it is similar to Assistant Chin, and it is also of the spiritual field. The innate talent is really enviable. Su Chen arrived at the academy less than a day ago. The whole person has become the man of the school. It turned out to be Omega level. John the Burning Man was a little unhappy. Young people are full of vigor, and they pay attention to being competitive. Even if they don't say it, they are not convinced in their hearts. Omega level does not mean strong strength, it can only be said that the qualifications are very good, but also depends on the subsequent potential development. Iceman Poppy folded his arms and said indifferently. When he entered the school 2 years ago, he had already enjoyed the admiration of everyone. Coincidentally, he was also rated as an Omega-level existence. You're right. No matter how strong your aptitude is, it's no use if you can't fully grasp your own abilities. John the Burning Man said to the Iceman a little bit. Snort. The Iceman's light-hearted expression suddenly became unhappy. Fireman's aptitude is only 1 level lower than him, but due to attribute restraint, the elemental attribute of the flame still suppresses him, and in 10 actual combats, he has been at a disadvantage 7 or 8 times. I will crush you in the future. I am waiting. The 2 brothers who were incompatible with each other began to fight each other again. But it didn't take long for the 2 to break the defense together. And many more. Didn't you just start school? Is this chemistry class where you can come? No one expected that they would meet Su Chen in a chemistry class in the afternoon. Why don't you welcome me? Su Chen shrugged indifferently. That young and handsome face and even the halo that he carried caused some sensation. Some female students said they were handsome, while others questioned whether it would be a bit awkward for the other party to take this class at his age. After all, they are generally older than Su Chen. His intelligence is much higher than the average person, and he has no problem participating in this class. Professor Charles in class said. Not only is he the president, but as a graduate of Harvard, he has a PhD. And as the master of the mind, he also knows that Su Chen, who also belongs to the spiritual realm, will definitely rise in intelligence. In fact, on the admission form, Su Chen also filled in a lot of education. In addition to the experience and knowledge brought by the time travel, he is indeed a bit higher than ordinary people in terms of brain development. In addition, not long after the time travel, he did not dare to easily expose the problem of abnormal intelligence. The teacher of the community school is not at all aware that the students under him have already mastered the textbook knowledge for more than 3 years. Coming to this mutant academy where there are many monsters and monsters, Su Chen naturally showed his intelligence without any scruples. Apart from their initial surprise, the students didn't care too much. After all, among them, there are also 2 younger students. High intelligence does not mean profound knowledge. Only when you study carefully can you become a smart person in the eyes of others. Professor Charles, the old man, can always find an entry point. He reminded Su Chen at the right time. Obviously, he also knew the Omega level result, and his intelligence was just like Su Chen's talent. If he didn't study and exercise, it would be a waste. Su Chen also nodded humbly to the professor's reminder. After all, this old man has never charged himself a penny. Su Chen's Mutant Academy life officially begins. He is like a sponge that absorbs water madly, absorbing all subject knowledge. In the past, he was just an ordinary college student. Now that his intelligence is high, Su Chen has really experienced a genius addiction. It is comparable to the quantum wave velocity method after reading a book, and he forcibly memorizes the content of the entire book with the ability to remember. To this end, he also specifically asked a Chinese mutant to learn how to create his own memory palace and organize books by category. In this way, Su Chen has a library in his mind, which is full of all the books he has read and browsed. His development of memory is even more exaggerated. As long as you hear a certain word, you can automatically retrieve it in this memory palace and quickly pull all kinds of knowledge. Even the Chinese-American student with a well-developed brain field was taken aback and called him a monster. The title of Genius Su Chen came out all of a sudden. After 3 months, not only the development of the brain domain, but perhaps the rich nutrition of the academy, Su Chen's height has increased by 3 centimeters, and his physique has become more symmetrical and slender. During this period, he did not go out of control and violently once, which made Assistant Chin Ji-lei, who had been observing, quite relieved. As if moistening things silently, his mutant abilities have been further awakened unconsciously. Like Jean Grey and McCoy the Beast, Su Chen is indeed a mutant with multiple abilities. Microscopic vision, infrared vision, perspective. The X gene continued to be expressed, the potential was tapped, the senses were further strengthened, and the eye perception abilities suddenly improved by leaps and bounds, so that Su Chen's eyes suddenly gave birth to a variety of abilities. Mind power, as a housekeeping skill and self-protection skill, will naturally be exercised repeatedly over time. In the actual combat course in the holographic simulation training room yesterday, he once fired a psychic cannonball, directly smashing multiple steel plates. You know, the material of steel plate is much stronger than human bones. Ordinary people can't bear this blow. This is the result of his training, and it is also the result of Chin Ji-lei's careful teaching as a teaching assistant. At this time, Su Chen is no longer as simple as letting his telekinesis grab items. Cohesion into one to form a psychic cannonball. Scattered around the body to form a psychic barrier. Offensive and defensive integration cannot be described as weak. Another 3 days have passed. His sense of smell has also evolved subtly, and his nose is able to separate many flavors from the air. Counting the infrared vision that can be observed in a night environment. The ability to see through an object and look directly behind it. Even like a camera lens, the viewing distance is constantly adjusted to observe the microscopic vision of smiling objects. And downwind ear-like hearing ability. Su Chen's sensory ability is not weak. Until now, Su Chen has somewhat understood the superpowers that he can rely on. It's not about telekinesis, telepathy, sensory enhancement, or unforgettable memories, etc., but the genes that evolve all the time. As Chin Ji-lei said at the time, his cells proliferated rapidly, and his ability to mutate and degenerate was extremely strong. And he could even consciously avoid observation to a certain extent. Good. The days are getting more and more promising. At least in the Marvel world where the Earth is going extinct and the universe is restarted, Su Chen has some skills to settle down. Even if he himself only dabbled in the movie universe and read some well-known comics in his previous life, several major events in the comic universe are really famous, so he has heard how dangerous it is. Even. The own universe may be only part of the multiverse. Certainly. At least in Su Chen's perception, the world in front of him is definitely not the real movie universe. The plot of the movie X-Men, First Class never happened, and the Hellfire Club still exists. So the Shockwave that died in the first battle is still alive, and he is also Cyclops Scott's second brother. This should be a cartoon setting. It's not just him. Darwin, the mutant in the film, is also alive. Su Chen looked out the window. He was the black guy who was playing with a teleport boy on the basketball court. Darwin's ability is very interesting. He can automatically adapt to the external environment. Intuitively, when he enters the ocean, he can grow fish gills and even further generate a murloc form. Desert terrain also allows the skin to quickly retain moisture and quickly adapt the body to the hot environment. And the members of the Avengers. During this time, although he hadn't walked past the mutant students, the news from the outside world did not fall. Television and the internet are so convenient that you can learn about the world without leaving your home. Especially the Playboy star Tony is still frequently appearing in the headlines. It is not difficult for him not to pay attention. Tony has become Iron Man. Because of his recent frequent appearances and high profile showing off of his mecha, Stark Group does not know how much the stock price has risen. Besides Tony, among the headline celebrities, he also noticed a Manhattan upstart. The so-called new financial giant, Victor Von Doom. To say that the level of brain domain is not developed, Su Chen absolutely can't remember what this name means, but the ability to never forget also recalls all the scenes and pictures that he has seen in his previous life. Dr. Doom. This is the big villain in the Fantastic Four, and the comics are very strong. The most well-known group of heroes right now is the Fantastic Four, who are already very active on the East Coast. S.H.I.E.L.D. is still hidden and unknown to the public. As for Team America, the 2 agents of Hawkeye Black Widow didn't show up either. Everything is very peaceful. It looked like the dawn before the stormy night. After all, Su Chen has noticed that the mutant registration scheme has been hyped by the lawmakers, and the outside fishing boats have also made the mutants' reputation worse and worse. A storm is about to sweep over the mutants, and the active atmosphere of the teachers and students of the academy has also declined somewhat. Don't think too much. Accumulating strength is the king after all. For Su Chen, it really was 3 months without taking a step from school. Since the first time he ran out of control at the community school, causing most of the teachers and students to fall into a coma, Su Chen did not go out for a few laps in a high-profile manner. I have to say that Professor X's memory cleaning ability is still a bit awesome. No reports or news have seen Su Chen's name appear. I didn't see the orphanage and school worrying after I disappeared. As if the world evaporated, the whole person completely disappeared from the archives. After staying in school for so long, Su Chen was called out by Qin Ji Lei before she even thought about going out to get some air. Staying in the academy for 3 months, don't you feel bored? I think you need to go out for a walk. On the grounds of psychological counseling, and in the name of salute balloons to prepare freshmen for admission, Su Chen followed Qin Ji Lei out of the academy. You're a lot taller. Qin Ji Lei glanced at Su Chen unexpectedly. Su Chen's height was roughly the same as hers. Qin still remembered that when she first brought him to the academy, she was at least half a head shorter, but after 3 months passed, she grew a little taller. Taking the car, the two came all the way to the streets of Manhattan. Here, there is a nice gift shop. Not right. Just when Phoenix girl Qin Ji Lei hadn't reached out and pushed the revolving door in front of her, she stopped. In the dark, she had a premonition of something. Some crises are brewing silently in the dark, as if someone is peeping from a distance, so that they are captured by the Phoenix girl with amazing telepathy. Be careful. She fell in love with Su Chen, but Su Chen, who was walking side by side just now, fell behind and had already stopped. Does this boy seem to have been warned of danger ahead of time? Sixth sense. Su Chen slightly stretched his brows. It was only at this moment that he realized that in addition to his 5 senses, he also had an early warning ability called the sixth sense. They were actually being watched. The warning from the sixth sense made both of them vigilant. For 2 outstanding telepathic people, such warning signs would not be ignored. Not good. Qin Ji Lei's words just fell. Whoosh. Like a hurricane blowing from the end of the road horizon, the violent movement suddenly set off a great wind, and in the blink of an eye, it approached in front of the two of them. In such an instant, before Lian Qin's exclamation was finished, Su Chen in front of him was completely swept away by the wind. Su Chen. Damn. Qin Ji Lei's expression changed immediately. In the last second, a living Su Chen was still beside him. In less than a second, Su Chen's figure had disappeared in place, and completely disappeared after an inexplicable storm swept through. Not a storm. That is, one person. Qin Ji Lei's expression suddenly became embarrassed. Under the faint telepathy, she clearly noticed that a guy was moving fast. Because of her personal speed, it caused an inexplicable wind. For this reason, she didn't even fully see the other's face. For a time, Qin Ji Lei was even at a loss. Although he is the host of the Phoenix, his own strength has always been similar to the state of being sealed, and his normal strength is not very high at all. When she was about to ask for help, an unfriendly voice sounded not far behind her. Maybe you should pay attention to what's behind you. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure suddenly bumped over from behind. The battle is so imminent. At the same time, less than 2 or 3 seconds. When Su Chen's eyes once again saw the world in front of him, he had already moved from a bustling street to a vast lawn. At this moment, I have crossed an unknown number of kilometers. How about it, little boy, isn't this ride comfortable? A contemptuous laughter followed. The initiator appeared in front of him, a woman with a high ponytail, a unique tattoo on her face, slightly darker skin, but full of a sense of fitness. This woman is Nocturnal, Callisto. Famous for speedsters and mutant radars, he is also an extremely rare multi-ability person among mutants. After Su Chen ran out of control for the first time, she felt the power of the other party personally. Good. I haven't seen you for 3 months, and your strength seems to have increased a lot. It seems that you have exercised well in the Mutant Academy. The sudden words and the sudden enemy made Su Chen a little confused. To be honest, he was also concerned about the fact that the community school got out of control. After all, the moment it broke out, most of the teachers and students were stunned, and there were hundreds of people. If it was spread, it would really be a big social incident. However, the official news has never been reported once, and it is obvious that Professor Charles has made a contribution. But Su Chen had a lot of calculations, but instead of waiting for the official investigation, he ushered in the peeping of mutants. Night Lady. Su Chen said the other party's name in one sentence. From her ability and demeanor, it is in line with the image of a mutant in the X-Men movie. You've heard of me. And it seems that you know a lot of things. It's a showdown. Join our mutant brotherhood. Your Excellency Magneto admires capable young people the most. Your joining will make him happy. The night girl said bluntly. This is the purpose of her trip. She has always been optimistic about Su Chen, and if she hadn't been too concerned about Professor Charles's ability, she wouldn't have waited until now to take action. Charles is too cowardly to hear yelling and swearing outside to send all mutants to prison. Charles, you can only hide inside like a turtle. And Magneto is ready to be a hero. Join us, get a big ticket. Any woman in the future will have wealth, and a city can give you to play. From her point of view, a young boy like Su Chen would probably be unable to resist such an empty promise. But after listening, Su Chen smiled. Why does it all sound like a terrorist? And, is this your invitation method? Su Chen raised his eyebrows slightly, and saw several figures standing scattered not far away on the open lawn. They folded their arms, said nothing, and even looked at Su Chen with a cold smile. It seems that the night girl brought him to such a place, and she didn't pick it anywhere. And these are also members of the past, Wandering Mutants, group. Like the night girl, they were annexed into the current Brotherhood. Yes, no one can refuse Lord Magneto, the night girl said firmly. Perhaps this is convert mania. Seeing that the olive branch thrown out was not caught by Su Chen, everyone came over with bad intentions. What came first was an unobservable psychic wave, invading directly towards Su Chen's consciousness. As a telepathic person, Su Chen will not be exploited by others. An invisible barrier has been formed in his mind to block this attack. Nocturnal girl Callisto didn't intend to use this to succeed. The main purpose was to distract the person in front of her. Then she tightened her fist and slammed it towards Su Chen's stomach quickly under the action of the acceleration force. After a lot of action, she has succeeded many times in the past. But she was obviously thinking too much. The same invisible wall of air blocked this fist as the intrusion of the mind was blocked. The night girl only felt the pain in her fist, and she punched the iron block. This is a barrier formed by psychic power. This guy. What a quick action. The night girl was a little surprised, and she had an inexplicable illusion that no matter how fast she moved, the other party's eyeballs seemed to be following. This is the dynamic vision ability that Su Chen has just mastered. This is a dynamic vision that feels everything slow down, as if the flow of time is being slowed down. Interestingly, this ability seems to have just been born in the first few seconds. Looks like you're unlucky. A shot that is determined to be won cannot be achieved. The next person to be troubled is Callisto, the night girl. Not good. Before she could speed up to get away in time, a surging power wave suddenly erupted in front of her. It was the fluctuation of psychic power. After rapidly brewing and condensing, it directly turned into a cannonball and slammed into the front. Boom. Hearing a loud bang, a wave of air exploded in front of him, and a clearly visible gully was plowed out of the lawn in front of him. The Nightwalker also naturally bore the brunt of it, and flew out dozens of meters away. Damn bastard. An angry curse came from Su Chen's body. I saw one after another of identical figures rushing towards them, that's right. They look exactly the same, without a single difference. Just like a shadow avatar performance, the man in front of him kept separating his avatars and rushed towards Su Chen, who was in the middle. Clone. As the saying goes, there is a wrong name, and there is no wrong name. This clone suddenly turned into dozens of figures. Interesting. Su Chen has already felt the life fluctuations of every figure. Each clone has its own pulse, and in the movie, it is even more fake, completely deceiving the thermal imaging equipment, and the military is playing around. It doesn't matter who is real and who is fake. Call. Su Chen took a deep breath, and at this moment, an increasingly surging wave was released centered on his body. Soon. The figures that approached one after another all floated up. Do not. Damn. Everyone's feet were off the grass, and under the interference of an invisible strong force, more and more people were caught in the air. Su Chen at this moment is not only as simple as dual purpose. There are more than 10 consciousnesses separated in the mind, and each consciousness completes an action and command. Whoosh. Some were thrown out like garbage. Some people were forcibly pinched in midair. Some people were used to smash the figure running behind. In just a few seconds, Su Chen almost cleaned up more than half of his avatars without any blood splashing. After being hit hard, these avatars dissipated like smoke. Ganching, you are so clamoring, but your body is so honest that you don't dare to come up. Su Chen sneered. Damn. Being ridiculed by a child who is not as old as himself, the Avatar's anger also rose a little. But he still suppressed his anger. There's something wrong with this guy. The subtext is undoubtedly strong and a little too much. Damn, quickly remove some of your clones. Those who scold are partners who belong to the same group. The avatars that rushed towards Su Chen directly blocked the line of sight, so that the mutant arc behind couldn't do it at all. Chi chi chi. The blazing electric light kept bouncing in her palm, and the wicked girl who got angry didn't care about her clone, and directly threw the long-brewed energy wave out of her palm. At this moment, Su Chen didn't care. Because the sixth sense reaction made him realize that the next power is very fast. The psychic power fluctuations scattered around the body immediately solidified in front of him, turning into invisible walls stacked together. Boom. It was like a bus crashed suddenly. Su Chen only felt a shudder all over his body. The psychic barrier in front of him was even more crumbling, and the surface was full of glass crack-like lines, as if it was about to collapse. Red tan per gram. Why are you still standing there? Take the time to catch him. The night girl, who was lying on the ground in the distance, stood up quite embarrassed. She gave orders to the strong man who had been motionless. After hearing the order, the sturdy guy looked at the night girl with a dull look, and then turned his eyes to Su Chen. Enemy, enemy, enemy. He whispered, repeatedly confirming who the enemy in front of him really was. Don't look at his sluggish behavior. This guy who doesn't seem to be very smart has a huge background. It is said that Magneto has also spent a lot of time in order to conquer this great cleverness, and then he has become a god of killing, and many official institutions have been destroyed by him alone. Boom. The next moment, he moved. The earth also trembled. Regardless of his sturdy physique, he was as cumbersome as a cow, but he ran like an armored car with the accelerator on, and suddenly rammed towards Su Chen. Su Chen frowned, suddenly feeling troubled, and even inexplicably anxious. Because just now, he tried to invade this monster's head with his mind wave, but there was no reaction at all when the Mudox entered the sea. This monster is immune to mind fluctuations, so that he can't stop the opponent at all. On one side is an arc of great destructive power. On one side is a monster rushing in suddenly. Su Chen gritted his teeth. Next second, the fluctuations of his consciousness gradually bloomed, and a more surging psychic power fluctuation erupted from the body. You shouldn't mess with him. This is downtown Manhattan, from Chin Gray's words. You better take care of yourself first. Several mutants of the mutant Brotherhood had already found her, and the two sides had already collided, so that the entire bustling street screamed in panic. The Brotherhood's ignoring the order and the battle of the lives of passers-by gave Chin Lei a lot of trouble to a certain extent. After absorbing more underground mutants, the behavior became more and more lawless and unscrupulous. In addition to the trouble, Chin Lei also began to worry about Su Chen. Not worried about his injury or even death, but afraid of him running out of control. Only those who have walked this road know how terrifying it can be to get out of control. Especially since this is a spiritual realm. Omega-level existence. Su Chen, who has been in control for 3 months, has a cheerful and optimistic mood, and Chin Gele has been paying attention to it, but now, once she encounters unexpected situations such as life-threatening, violent mood swings, etc., I am afraid it will not be like this. Simply ended. Damn frat. You shouldn't mess with him, and you shouldn't mess with me either. The next second, Chin Lei's breath became more and more dangerous. Chin Lei's breath suddenly became dangerous. She needs to finish as soon as possible to find Su Chen. Although the power of the Phoenix Force was not sealed intentionally by Professor Charles, after so many years, Chin, who was always with him, knew how to use a bit of power from it. A trace of power is enough. It doesn't look like much, but a trace of the power of the Phoenix is enough to win the battle quickly. Just like that, a phantom of a phoenix faintly appeared behind Chin Lei, chanting with a sing-along neck. Boom. At the same moment, Su Chen's body erupted with terrifying psychic fluctuations. That was his all-out effort, almost squeezing every shred of power he could mobilize in his body, like a dam venting, all of which poured out to the enemies around him. Boom. There was another muffled landing sound. The monster, the red tank per gram, did not retreat, but advanced, and the entire bulky and huge body accelerated even further. Collision is imminent. Boom. At this moment, Su Chen's psychic torrent hit a rock, and you are in a storm, but it is a monster that can't stop you at all. On the contrary, the body of the red tank per gram only shook slightly, and the whole person continued to rush forward and suddenly slammed into Su Chen. Boom. Another muffled bang. The psychic barrier that barely supported the whole body shattered, and Su Chen's body suddenly flew upside down. The enemy is really terrible. In fact, compared to the saber-toothed tiger, another hero of the Brotherhood, Red Tank per gram can almost completely crush him. The reason is that this monster's physique itself and even the source of power do not come from his own X gene. It is the Crimson Evil God, Setolik, from an extraterritorial dimension who gave him this power. With a physique comparable to the Hulk, and with the incarnation of unstoppable power, no one can stop his progress. Monster. Scary monster. This guy. Su Chen felt a little discouraged. He clenched his teeth and tried to restrain the blood he was about to spurt. The figure flying upside down in midair, supported by his own psychic power, immediately released the momentum of this shock. The instinct to survive made him want to run for the first time. If you use the power of mind to fly in this way, you may be able to fly far away. But when this idea first came up, the attack from the arc came instantly. Whoosh. Whoosh. There was a whirring sound, and the arc, which could be rated as level 4, continuously lost energy beams, and the attack in his hand was like a laser beam in Star Wars, penetrating into the air. With his sixth sense, Su Chen, who had the warning in place, didn't even observe with his eyes, and wiggled his body in midair to avoid a single attack. But the mutant's arc light attack is too dense, and Su Chen is also like a target in midair, so that he is very embarrassed. Fly, fly. Fly for me. See if I can break your legs. Arc clamored. As for whether she will kill the opponent or not, she doesn't care, because if this mission is rejected, she doesn't mind killing the stubborn opponent completely. As a last resort, Su Chen was even forced to land on the lawn in the distance. This caused more and more roaring laughter from the other side. And the red tank, Graham's attack has not stopped. Just when Su Chen's figure just landed, the light above his head suddenly darkened, not because of the sudden arrival of darkness, but because the monsters in the distance jumped in place, blocking the light from the sky. The distance between the two is 100 meters away. But the jumping ability of this monster has exceeded the limit of Su Chen's imagination. The impactful visual effects also collided head-on, and the invisible pressure also fell like the top of Mount Tai. At this moment, Su Chen inexplicably thought of the meteorite hitting the ground, and he was about to endure an extremely terrifying force. This is to die for. This is his first fight. Adding up the two generations, he who grew up under the red flag has never experienced such an intense and lethal threat. The threat of death directly made Su Chen's sixth sense resound through his head. After a moment of blankness in the brain, the nerves were completely tense, every string was tense, the mood fluctuated to the extreme, and the heart rate exceeded a very dangerous signal. What a joke. How could it be possible to die here? Can't die. Can't die. The instinct to survive immediately activated Su Chen's untapped potential. In the depths of the despised body, the trillions of cells in the whole body released their vitality like a melting pot. Each genetic code was running rapidly, and even the silent part of the X gene was also activated. The consciousness of the mind is like the boiling sea in the eruption of a volcano, setting off all kinds of fluctuations. Can't die. At this moment, under the survival instinct, Su Chen, who was completely out of control, suddenly burst into terrifying mental fluctuations. You should be the monster who died. Die. The monstrous anger has penetrated into reality, and a terrifying invisible force of annihilation even took the form of decomposing particles, once annihilating the surrounding lawns and even air molecules. Boom. What is even more exaggerated is that a mysterious and unpredictable force even made the figure jumping in midair burst open. One word decides life and death. Just one word of death is enough to obliterate the opponent's life. Puff. There was a rain of blood in the sky, and without any substantial contact, the red tank per gram was inexplicably and subtly split up in midair by a force. This kind of power performance is somewhat similar to the scene in which Scarlet Wanda killed the entire mutant race in one sentence under her emotional breakdown. This is the power of tampering with reality. Their spiritual power is enough to penetrate into reality, so as to achieve the purpose of modification. Mighty and invincible, the mighty red tank per gram was so unfortunately hit by this force. At this moment, the already dumbfounded Ark was bathed in the rain of blood, staring dumbly at Su Chen, who was mad and out of control in the distance. Not good. Run. When she regained her senses, she immediately felt the danger of death. Next, it's her turn. The sudden upheaval immediately made the mutant Arclight realize something was wrong. There's something wrong with this kid, run away. She desperately greeted her companion. What made her angry was the night girl Callisto had already disappeared, and left immediately. Sure enough, the friendship of the underground mutants is unreliable at all, and this damn bastard is in danger, regardless of everyone's safety. It's an Omega mutant, he must be an Omega-level existence. The Avatar's body trembled and said with a panicked face. As a radar for searching for mutants, the Nightcrawler created the mutant rating method popular in the underground. Another set of grading methods implemented by the Xavier Academy for gifted boys starts with the X gene and grades them from power, potential and defects. These people may not know the specific content, but the ultimate Omega level is like thunder. After all, Magneto, the leader of the fraternity, was also Professor Charles's initial partner before they parted ways. The concept of Omega level, which is a bit buggy, still makes all fraternity members yearn for. Unlimited potential, unlimited power, and energy utilization have reached a new level, involving molecular and microscopic levels to a certain extent, and it is an existence that can be called the ultimate power. No wonder Nightcrawler is so interested in him. If he can't get it, he will even destroy him at all costs, and never add another general to the future of the X-Men. Unfortunately, they ushered in a scene where each other's spirits went out of control. In the mysterious and unknown power, the red tank per gram, who was still invincible just now, ushered in a tragic end. But this is just the beginning. On the verge of life, Su Chen, who was in a mental runaway, directly released the power of terror. Reality tampering. A simple word of death in his mouth directly caused an incomparably strong monster to explode its body. Under normal conditions, the mental power is invisible, but after running out of control, this mental fluctuation directly formed waterlines in the surrounding air, like a rippling lake. Su Chen's black hair is also automatically under this force without wind. The whole person's feet are off the ground, a handsome and childish face is full of cold colors, and the black and white eyes are full of killing intent. Let's die together. The huge potential inspired by the near-death made Su Chen feel another power hidden in the body at this moment. At this moment, the sky suddenly darkened. This Arclight's complexion suddenly became extremely pale, and at the same time, the whole person's face was full of incredible colors. What is this? She is stupid. There were waves of ripples and fluctuations in the air, and a meteorite appeared out of thin air in an instant. Meteorite. It's a real meteorite. Do not. The mutant Arclight shouted, and she immediately resisted hysterically, knowing that she could not escape. Whoosh whoosh. Terrifying light waves were continuously shot out of her hands, and the vast energy poured out of her body, but it was obviously not enough to see such a huge meteorite. Under the blessing of terrifying gravity, the meteorite that appeared out of thin air crashed to the ground. Boom. Accompanied by a roar, the meteorite smashed down, directly forming a small seismic wave, and the place where it hit and fell directly sunk down. As for the figure of the Arclight, a bloody mud was formed under the impact. If Phoenix female Chin Ge Lei saw this scene, she would definitely exclaim, imagination. Yes. Under the loss of mental control, the violent mental fluctuations penetrated into reality to a certain extent, forming various unimaginable forces. First it was reality tampering, and now it's the realization of fantasy. Su Chen's will has communicated with the world, making reality change according to one thought. Why do meteorites appear? There's a reason for this, and the answer is actually pretty simple. Su Chen's death threat was created by the red tank per gram ultra-long distance jump, and the coercive force from the mid-air force made him feel the threat of meteorites falling from the sky. How powerful is the human subconscious mind? It is like an iceberg. The island exposed on the water is only a part of the iceberg, and most of the volume is hidden under the water. Now, under Su Chen's unconscious subconscious, let him show a meteorite that killed the mutant Arc. Depend on. Is that human being? The clones are all dumbfounded. The movement just now was so great that when he fled, he turned around and saw a meteorite falling from the sky. Certainly. His end has come. Compared with the extremely fast night girl, I wish my parents could give a two-legged avatar that could not run very far at all. Suddenly, a very abrupt train sound came from far and near. The clone swallowed instantly. Others are about to collapse. Train. He couldn't imagine that there was a train out of nowhere in a wilderness, and it suddenly crashed from the horizon in the distance. For a while, his consciousness was blank. The whole person has lost the ability to survive. I beg you. Let me go. Everything is the order of the night girl, it's all done by that vicious woman, let me go. The Avatar begged for mercy, no longer arrogant. But obviously, Su Chen didn't let him go. The retro train that suddenly came from the end of the horizon suddenly crushed the opponent's body and ruined the opponent's life. Qin Ji Lei's worry is not suspicious, Su Chen is indeed mad. In Marvel, only the leader in the spiritual realm will explode with terrifying power once he runs out of control. In Marvel films and TV alone, the Phoenix female Qin Ji Lei has lost control many times. One burst, just like a mechanical seance, the mighty apocalypse was lost in seconds. Another burst, almost annihilating the entire world into powder. As for the Scarlet Witch Wanda, who also burst out with Omega-level strength, she has already wiped out most of the mutants in the comics. Certainly. Compared to them, Su Chen's loss of control did not go out of control, and even soon returned to his senses. Interesting. Su Chen sighed. The anger suddenly fell, and the surging mental fluctuations gradually subsided like a wave, and suddenly returned to a stable and calm state of water. This is the power I have never awakened. Can it be regarded as the power in the form of Omega? On the verge of death, he suddenly lost control and ran rampant, and this time he suddenly exploded with unprecedented potential. Su Chen doesn't have any system, so naturally he doesn't know how big his potential is. Now that I can see the leopard in the tube, I also know more or less what is special about myself. More than a spiritual penetration of reality. My body cells are indeed a bit unique. Su Chen raised his right hand, and the wound on his arm that he used to fight against, but now, unknowingly, it has healed perfectly as before. Even the internal injury caused by the impact of the red tank per gram just now almost vomited blood and fell to the ground, and now I can't feel anything wrong with my body. Is this healing power? Su Chen never found out that he still had this good ability. After all, it was defined as the spiritual field from the beginning, so I didn't pay too much attention to other abilities outside the spirit. But now, the momentum of extraordinary healing is so that all the wounds he has suffered are gone. This reminded Su Chen of the experimental report Qin Ji Lei originally gave him. Not only the X gene, but the evolution and transformation of his other genes is extremely fast, and even the vitality of the cells in the body exceeds the imagination of ordinary people. It seems that one of the functions of this vitality is to restore his injuries like a self-healing factor. Are you okay? At this moment, Qin Ji Lei's voice suddenly came from Su Chen's ear. Fine. They are all dead, Su Chen said flatly. It was his first fight and his first kill. Perhaps it was the relationship between the enemy's immortality, and he didn't feel any discomfort. People don't offend me, I don't offend people. He won't have the slightest sympathy for these scumbags, and he can still figure out the right and wrong. Hearing this, Qin Ji Lei was silent for a while. Then, I can't keep this telepathic communication for long. You leave quickly. The police have already arrived. You walk along the forest road and meet at the supermarket street 1 kilometer away. She relies on the power of the Phoenix to forcibly communicate with her mind. In order not to trigger the Black Phoenix state, Qin Ji Lei did not dare to use it more after she had dealt with the members of the Brotherhood. Soon, surrounded by the police car that came over after hearing the sound, Su Chen had already pulled away and successfully joined Phoenix Girl at the intersection of the supermarket. Leave first, and then go back to the academy. Without much chatting, the two had already taken the vehicle and rushed back to the Mutant Academy as soon as possible. The news of the attack on Su Chen and Jean Grey spread all over the Mutant Academy. After Professor Charles learned about it, he suddenly fell silent. Since Magneto Eric parted ways with him many years ago, the two forces have not had much communication, but today there is an attack by members of the Brotherhood. The attack on Qin may not be the original intention, but the purpose is to take Qin away. Because Jean Grey was brought back to the academy by him and Magneto after he was discovered at the age of 6, Eric was very clear about Jean Grey's potential. In addition to this, he should have learned about the same Omega-level potential of Su Chen. Magneto has recently expanded its enrollment and attracted a lot of people into the Brotherhood. Most of those people are underground mutants, and many of them are vicious criminals, so be careful recently. After Professor Charles finished speaking, he sighed a little. The separation of the two is an ideological discord. Magneto can no longer stand human beings, and sooner or later will start a frontal war. Now that the mutant registration plan has been brought up again and again by the parliamentarians, the contradiction between the two has only one flame that ignites the fuse. If it is not necessary, everyone must pay attention to safety when going out. Professor Charles has repeatedly emphasized, If there is a chance, I will communicate with Magneto in person. But I will try to keep the mutant registration bill from passing through Parliament until then. Once the mutant registration plan is passed, it is equivalent to uncovering all hidden and potential mutants in the entire world. Put a mutant label on their profile personal information, so as to achieve the control of mutants and prevent them from doing anything that endangers society. It is conceivable that in such an atmosphere of hatred for mutants, once all of them are exposed, how much discrimination and how much injustice they will suffer. It must not pass. Professor Charles made up his mind. For these high-level decisions in the game with Magneto, Su Chen personally doesn't care much. The people above have a headache. He's currently just a student at a mutant academy. At this time, he began to secretly ponder his new abilities, and made it clear that he had two forms. One is normalized, which can be called your normal level. The other is runaway, another form activated when danger is involved, especially the threat of imminent death, usually manifested as hyperactivation of cells and runaway mental energy. And this kind of spiritual energy is running wild, at least now it seems that there are no sequelae. Su Chen has no scruples similar to Qin Ji Lei, and will become another dark phoenix with a negative personality. Only, at present, he is not easy to go berserk. Unless someone pissed them off, or put themselves in a dangerous situation. And in the first battle, after experiencing the crisis for the first time, Su Chen not only determined normalization, it was as simple as being violent. The next day, Su Chen, who just got up from the cotton couch, was about to take a shower, but found that the toothbrush he was holding in his right hand suddenly snapped open. This made Su Chen stunned. He tried to pick up another cup on the table, but the plastic cup also cracked. The sudden unusualness surprised Su Chen. He suddenly realized that something was wrong with his power. Why did your power suddenly become stronger? An hour later, he finally regained his sense of control over his own power. For this reason, more than 10 eggs have been crushed. Then, Su Chen rushed to the training room non-stop. Xavier Genius Academy has the most complete training equipment, and he came to the edge of an ordinary boxing dynamometer. Call. Su Chen took a deep breath, then suddenly clenched his fist and slammed the dynamometer. Soon, a 1700 PT character jumped out of the display. He has known professional boxers, and this value is very exaggerated. If he is not at the peak of his career, he may not be able to hit such a powerful punch. This is still based on Su Chen's failure to find an accurate way to exert his strength. Before that, he hadn't even shaken anyone with his fist. The physical strength is much greater. Su Chen guessed a little, and somewhat understood the reason. It is the genes of their own infinite mutation and evolution that are at work. Is this stimulated, and then further immune countermeasures? Suddenly, a conjecture came to mind. The body couldn't bear the power of the red tank per gram yesterday. If it wasn't for the power of the mind, I'm afraid I would be crushed on the spot. Even so, I was injured because of it. After all, my body is not stronger than ordinary people. How strong? Although the highly active cells bring about extraordinary healing, the injury is real. The injury proves that the body is weak, and the genes immediately begin to further strengthen in the direction of the body. The idea seems to be clear. He was undoubtedly inspired by a mutant student, Darwin. The mutant ability of this black guy is very interesting. Any harsh environment can prompt him to adapt and change, and his ability to survive is almost full. Just like the abuse of antibiotics in humans, drug-resistant supercells will also be produced. It may be appropriate to use Darwin as an example. And the infinitely enhanced version of Darwin's ability should belong to Doomsday. Su Chen can't remember wrong. Doomsday in American comics can adapt to all environments and all enemies, and can evolve all the abilities to restrain opponents in battle. In the movie, this monster once ate a nuclear explosion, and as a result, it evolved an ability similar to the use of energy, able to absorb and release any and all forms of energy by itself. If it weren't for the weakness of kryptonite in the movie version of Doomsday, I'm afraid it would become more and more invincible under the beating of the human army and a group of superheroes. The more you fight, the stronger it sounds. After being injured, the bug-level ability to restrain the opponent has evolved, and it is temporarily doubtful. Certainly. Even when comparing Doomsday, Su Chen has a huge advantage of his own. The former does not have its own omega-level spiritual energy. He doesn't need to be passively under pressure to be able to evolve himself, but he still needs a lot of time to grow. It's enough until you grow up. A few days later, Qin Ji Lei has completed the psychological evaluation of Su Chen. This is a routine checkup, but this time the psychological evaluation was brought forward a few days after the last fraternity attack. There's nothing wrong with your mental state. Teacher Chin, I said I don't need this kind of thing. Su Chen said. Chin shook her head, insisting that this was necessary. Trust me, it's for your own good, she sighed. In fact, after only 3 months of school life, Su Chen is already the student she communicates with the most. Because Chin Gray was not very popular at Xavier Academy for Gifted Boys, many students who had been at the school for many years would avoid her when they saw her. The reason is because the piano itself cannot control its own power. In the past 10 years, just to make up for the outbreak of the power of the Phoenix, the entire manor has been renovated many times for this purpose. You are in adolescence, it's natural to be emotionally changeable, and a little mental block is very likely to cause unnecessary trouble. According to her estimation from studying play psychology, Su Chen broke out for the first time for no reason. The free community school is a mixed bag, with worrying teaching resources, and racial discrimination abounds in it. Under such a long-term repressive atmosphere, it may cause him to lose control for the first time inexplicably. The second time out of control is a simple and clear, life-threatening mental out of control. So I have hit a lot of nails since I grew up in adolescence. You can't follow my old path in the future. Otherwise, the way everyone looks at you will only turn into fear. Chin Ji Lei rarely opened her heart and confided her heart. From Su Chen's point of view, she was making a big fuss, because her emotions fell quickly after her mental runaway, and she has always maintained her rationality, and she will not go out of control completely. But nor would he reject such behavior. After all, Phoenix Girl's good intentions, he will not refuse. Since the second out-of-control outbreak, perhaps the further expression of the X gene was stimulated, Su Chen felt more and more that new abilities were constantly emerging. Everything is going in a good direction, soon. Xavier Tianshao Junior College still enrolled students as scheduled. Fortunately, there were not too many accidents in this enrollment. It is worth mentioning that there are some familiar faces of Su Chen in this recruitment. Don't touch other people's little naughty. A phantom cat that can traverse obstacles. A mutant who resembles a female star flashes. And Bishop, who also appeared in Days of Future Past. This is the future X-Men team. I heard you beat 4 fraternity members alone. Among them, there are even clones, underground mutants such as Arclight. Underground mutants are a general term, generally referring to those mutants who exist in the underground black market and engage in illegal transactions. Among them, the Wandering Mutants group has a very good reputation in the Queens area. Westchester County and Queens belong to New York City. Naturally, I have heard the notoriety of these outlaws. Cool. I won't agree to the X-Men without your spot. In the past few days, the news about Su Chen's battle with the members of the Brotherhood has spread all over the place. Su Chen, who was in the limelight, suddenly became a man of the year, and was admired by a group of newly enrolled freshmen. Shit. There's no evidence that he defeated the Brotherhood. Maybe it's still from the Phoenix Girl. It's not impossible for the two of them to have such a good relationship. John the Burning Man said a little unhappily. Not likely. Iceman shook his head without hesitation. At least they wouldn't lie about this, and even if he didn't agree with his mouth, he already knew in his heart that he was probably not Su Chen's opponent. Humph. I just don't feel good about that kid anyway. John the Burning Man was a little displeased. Just like the flame ability in his body, John's character is very impulsive and has a violent temper. Moreover, compared to Iceman's family environment, Burning Man had a very unhappy childhood, and the scuffle from his parents seemed to have left a childhood shadow in his heart. Such a sensitive and thoughtful person, he always felt that the other party looked down on him in his heart. If Su Chen heard his thoughts, he would definitely sneer. Look down on him. To be honest, it's not that he thought too much. Su Chen did have such emotions. As for why, it's even simpler. If you spoiled in advance and knew in advance that this was a traitor who betrayed the X-Men and threw himself into the darkness in the future, would you still have a good eye for him? Certainly. Burning Man's remarks are not without any market. At least some people in the academy do not like Su Chen very much. It is not because the other party is too handsome and powerful to occupy the priority of the spouse, but because Su Chen, an omega-level existence in the spiritual realm, is obviously the target of the Phoenix Girl. After hearing the rumors that Su Chen ran out of control at the community school, they all thought it was another unstable time bomb, so they were a little conflicted. Afternoon. A training session. Thanks to the scientific research strength of the beast, The equipment used by the X-Men is the world's top cutting-edge level. So the entire training session was equipped with holographic simulation technology. The mutants in class can even be placed in a battlefield where artillery is flying, and feel the real effect of it. Each student will wear a specific sensory equipment suit. If they are hit with too much energy, they will be judged to be dead. In order to truly simulate the battlefield effect, and to make a student take it seriously. The sensor equipment on the body can even give people a certain nerve pain effect, but it is weakened by more than 50%, so if you want to not feel the pain, you should seriously improve yourself. This is Su Chen's second training session, and it's still a confrontation today. Each side sent 5 people to fight with their mutant abilities. The contestants are clear winners, and everyone has a good chance of becoming an X-Men. The competition has officially started. With the help of the holographic simulation environment, the people on both sides were quickly placed in an abandoned and broken factory, and there was even a fog shrouded in the dim night, which was a great test for everyone's eyesight. The 5 people on the opposite side start at the dock outside the factory. We are in the B-1 factory, and now we should immediately move to the roof of the A1 factory, where there is a good view, and we can observe the dynamics of the opposite side from the commanding heights. Colossus began to command as a training veteran. Only Su Chen, who was on the same side, interrupted his speech. Unnecessary. I'm here in person to handle some personal matters, by the way. Under the dumbfounded eyes of the 4 teammates, Su Chen walked out of the factory alone. It's coming. At this time, the pier outside the factory was already being guarded, and when they saw a figure walking out of the fog, they immediately cheered. Is this an idiot, a newcomer? In less than a second, an attack spewed out from his side first. It's a fireball. Burning Man John's superb fire control technique and precise long-range bombing ability are enough to make his strength level 4 in the underground rating. Whoosh. The fireball fell from the sky, dispelling the smoke at once, and suddenly revealing the single figure who came out. What? It's him. Su Chen. Under the exclamations of the crowd, the Erlunger, in their eyes was just a wave of his hand, just like swatting a fly, completely smashing the oncoming fireball away. Damn bastard. John the Burning Man was furious, it turned out to be this guy. Exasperated, he didn't have any reservations at once. A flame jumped out of his palm, and even the flames of the brazier around him obeyed his command and suddenly swept towards Su Chen. But in the face of this, Su Chen just snapped his fingers lightly. Despair. Then, the surging psychic power fluctuations enveloped the incoming flames, like a red tornado, pouring back on the Burning Man on the opposite side. John the Burning Man was stunned, he had realized that the other party was coming for him. Do not. In a scream, the Burning Man who couldn't beat the tornado was immediately thrown into the sky by the storm, and his figure was rolling around like clothes in a laundry tub. Not to mention that the fireworks mixed in it also burned his body, by the way. I hate when people speak ill of me secretly. Terribly sorry. My hearing is not very sensitive. Su Chen smiled. Su Chen knew all about John the Burning Man's bad words behind his back. The jealousy mixed with sourness was captured by his sensitive hearing ability. It's fine for me to be sour. And secretly speaking ill of Qin Ji Lei behind her back, right? Su Chen raised his eyebrows and said with some disdain. Whoa. The tornado gradually subsided, and John the Burning Man, who was wrapped in the sky, fell directly from the air. He fell to the ground in pain and rolled around, wearing a special suit with sensing devices to absorb a lot of damage, but some of the pain was actually sensed on the nerves. Su Chen's right hand touched his forehead slightly, and mind reading captured John's thoughts. I see. Su Chen smiled. For this future traitor, he naturally did not show any kindness at all, and he was not the kind of person with a city government. His personal joys and sorrows were all reflected on his face, and he never thought about what to do to cover up the feelings of others. He is such a real person. Too bad some people can't stand it. John. How can this guy be so powerful? Several people in the same team suddenly looked at each other, unable to believe that the Su Chen in front of him had managed to get John the Burning Man in an understatement. One clapped his hands to put out the fireworks, and another snapped his fingers to set off a gust of wind that swept up John. This light-hearted action is full of unrestrainedness, and it is simply that Fireman is not regarded as a level opponent. Been crushed. Thoroughly, without a trace of suspense. Odd this. There were voices of surprise from behind, and several members of the same team came hurriedly. They were only a few seconds behind, and as soon as they walked out of the factory gate, they saw a person lying on the ground by the pier in front of them. Give it to me. I'm enough alone. Su Chen waved his hand, did not turn around, and said lightly. Is this the rhythm of hitting all the opponents? Heard. Everyone is a little stupid, wouldn't this be a little too wild? In fact, when assigning teams, we have already considered the issue of balance of strength, otherwise there will not be an Iceman on the opposite side, and there is also an Omega-level Su Chen here. Colossus opened his mouth and wanted to say a few more words of exhortation, but the words didn't come out of his throat, but he felt a little unnecessary. He can win. It is good, very good. This time, it made Poppy the Iceman look a little embarrassed. Also at the Omega level, I won't be so underestimated by you. Among them, the most worrying person is him. After all, our qualifications are also the same level. Both belong to the Omega level, there is also a gap. Su Chen responded calmly, and the calm tone was full of confidence, as if she was talking about a natural thing. I understand. Call. Iceman Bobby suddenly entered a state, he vomited white frost, and his entire body and his battlesuit were all turned into a piece of frost armor. In less than 2 seconds, the surrounding air also cooled down, and snowflakes fell for no reason. Who? And Su Chen's words also aroused the fighting spirit of several other people. One person did not wait for the Iceman to fully enter the state, and then acted rashly. His movements are quick and his steps are nimble, and his limbs are directly prostrate on the ground, using all 4 limbs together, like a cheetah in the jungle. Like McCoy the Beast, this mutant is also physically flawed, completely animalized, and a mutant in the realm of power. In his opinion, mutants in the spiritual and spiritual realm, even Omega level ones, are weak and cannot be good at close combat. Once they are in close contact with him, they will definitely lose directly. Boom. This cheetah's acceleration start was bursting with thunder, and the burst speed in a short period of time was no less than that of the night girl. In an instant, his figure seemed to jump into Su Chen's pupils, and the whole person was covered with vision. Good come. At this moment, Su Chen did not choose to use psychic power. His black and white eyes have a very terrifying dynamic vision ability, and he shows the movements of the hands of the person in front of him in his own pupils like slow motion analysis. Click. Su Chen suddenly held the leopard's body with both hands. At this moment, like a cheetah that wants to choose and devour a weak human being. No one expected that Su Chen would choose to confront him head-on. No way. How could he use his body to compete with the cheetah? That's his weakness. It's too late. The cheetah started too fast. It should have made him unable to react in time. The people's words just fell. Roar. The mutant cheetah in front of him let out a roar full of surprise, and at the moment of frontal contact, Su Chen took a big step back. But that's all there is to it. After half a step, Su Chen's arms surged with surging power, his body gradually stood upright, and then he completely suppressed the momentum of the forward pressure. It's still a long way off. These words seemed to disdain him in the ears of the cheetah. But for Su Chen, it was dissatisfaction. Because he has competed head-on against Red Tank per gram, he knows how terrifying the impact of that monster's body is, and it is definitely not comparable to this unknown mutant student in front of him. Therefore, I am still not satisfied with the body strength that I just transformed, and the speed of lifting the strength is still a little worse. Not enough. But for others, they were completely stunned. When did his body have such strength? This is what people don't understand. Whoa. Going even further, Su Chen, who was growing more and more powerful from his body, directly pulled up the opponent's arm, and then smashed his figure on a student behind him like a shot put. Since then, for the first time, Su Chen showed terrifying physical brute force in public. He's too scary. The ability of a spiritual and spiritual realm suddenly burst out with such terrifying physical brute force, it was enough to scare fools. It's like the phoenix female Qin Ji Lei will not suddenly pick up her arm and punch the enemy away. Scarlet Wanda will not pull up her sleeves and hit people with punches and kicks. This is so out of line with their personal style. So, why is that? What the hell is going on with this Su Chen? Everyone was puzzled. Very good. Iceman's expression was already very solemn, and under the continuous brewing of his personal ice power, his fighting spirit also reached its peak. You did exceed my expectations, but please also let you see the power from another Omega. Compared to John the Burning Man, Iceman, who has a more modest and reserved personality, also has his own arrogance. He knew that his opponent was strong, but he was unwilling to admit defeat. Because before this guy Su Chen came, he was the future of the X-Men compared to the unstable Phoenix girl. Come to fight. Iceman Poppy raised his hand, and the snowflakes condensed in the air suddenly turned into ice blades. Whoosh! In the moment he waved his hand, a handle of ice blades suddenly spread all over the sky, forming a surrounding net directly facing Su Chen. More than that. The ground under Su Chen's feet suddenly surged, and with a bang, an icicle burst out of the ground abruptly, appearing directly in an unimaginable way. Is the Iceman stimulated? It's a lot stronger so suddenly. Indeed, he is a lot more serious. It's a little different from the previous state when I played against the Fireman. Colossus and the others immediately felt the surging fighting will of the Iceman. For a long time, this guy has been a little careless, and now it seems that he is stimulated by Su Chen, who is also an Omega class. There was something he really said right. He is also an Omega level existence. It's the future of the X-Men. Swish. But under the prediction of the extraordinary senses, the surrounding winds and grasses, and the inappropriateness of the hair level, will not miss a trace in Su Chen's perception. The moment the movement under his feet broke out, his entire figure had already left the ground. Just waiting for you to fly. Iceman naturally thought of the opponent's next move. After all, it was an easy thing to do to drive his body into the air. So. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Pieces of ice swords that covered the sky immediately drew beautiful arcs and turned to shoot into the air. Clang. The sound of the collision was loud like the clash of golden arms, and the ice chips splashed and fell from the sky. Successful? Everyone's eyes widened, not daring to miss a scene. The Iceman gritted his teeth, but he could vaguely see the figure of the other party in the smoke in the air. He was still above the air, and even folded his arms, looking down at himself on the ground from the sky if interested. That kind of overlooked gaze combined with the aloof figure made the Iceman feel extremely discouraged, like a king inspecting his subjects.
Damn, it's the power of thought. Obviously, it was the invisible barrier formed by psychic power that blocked the attack just now.
Be careful. Just then, someone reminded me. Su Chen in midair has condensed a psychic cannonball, which fell from the sky, pointing directly at the Iceman on the ground. Call. The Iceman took a deep breath, focused his attention, and released a terrifying power of frost at this moment. His ice-blue pupils shrunk all of a sudden, perhaps being forced out of his true potential. This time, he didn't need some time to brew or prepare in advance. The vast and surging ice power was created out of nothing, and he created an iron dome of ice blocking the top of his head. Bobby him. This is the power of Omega. At this moment, everyone present felt that the body temperature had slipped to a very dangerous signal. Because the temperature around it is really cool. The body is cold, but the heart of Colossus is hot. Bobby, he was excited for his friend. After all these years, the Omega level power he had never activated had finally exploded. Before that, he was a little depressed because he was once suppressed by the fireman attribute. Iceman Poppy even wondered if he was the wrong grade by the Academy and judged his talent wrong. But this time, he finally saw his true power. Ignore the laws of thermodynamics, ignore all the laws of energy operation in reality, and make ice out of thin air. The ice is where the ice is. You must know that in the first wave of offensive just now, Iceman Poppy was brewing for this in advance, and some slowly let the water molecules in the air obey his will and turn into ice. In contrast, John the Burning Man even had to prepare his own fireworks. Now, Iceman doesn't need to deal with reality at all. What he sees and what he thinks is the moment when the ice power is born out of thin air. Terrible. The surging boundless ice power was rapidly born at a speed he could not have imagined before, forming a gorgeous sky of ice that was supported in the air. Because the power of the Iceman is too explosive and eroded by the sub-zero ice force, the holographic simulation device that maintains the training ground can no longer operate, so that it is similar to a game card bug, and the surroundings flicker. Boom. But at this moment, the sky that supported his head was still shattered, and Su Chen's psychic burst was suppressed. Good. That's what's interesting. Su Chen is still the same bland look. From the Iceman's point of view, this is still the expression of victory, and he is not impressed by his performance at all, and feels a little flustered about it. Do you really think you are invincible? Iceman Poppy's eyes have already seen the other person's figure swooping down from the broken sky gap. This ignores all laws, and the ice power created out of thin air still can't stop him. Do not. I still can't admit defeat. Iceman Poppy was under extreme pressure, and his pupils contracted again. This time, he seemed to have groped for that unreachable power. That was the ultimate ability that Professor Charles told him. Freeze all the air molecules around you, everything, everything in reality will stagnate in front of you. This is your ultimate power. Come. Just let you feel my Omega power.
Iceman wanted to use this force forcibly, trying to make the surrounding temperature slide below absolute zero.
Pity. The temperature rose suddenly. I don't like low temperatures, it made me very uncomfortable. The swooping figure ruthlessly announced the answer, the words fell, and this country of ice was completely disintegrated. Iceman Poppy's momentum was instantly disintegrated at this moment. For no reason, not seeing any momentum. No one can understand why the ice world, which was still covered with frost just now, all retreated at once, and the temperature rose rapidly and returned to normal temperature. Not good. Iceman, who had no conditions to impose freezing, immediately realized that his crisis had come. The body that swooped down didn't stop for a moment, and directly slammed into the sky, as if it were a meteorite falling, and a loud bang caused a huge movement. Boom. The earth directly formed a pit. Ice shards sputtered everywhere. The ice armor of the Iceman has been shattered, and the whole body is also lying on the ground, and the white ice crystals gradually slough back into his flesh and blood. Iceman lost. What an exaggerated fighting style. Colossus opened his mouth and hesitated. Unexpectedly, the last Su Chen would end the battle in this way, wrapping his body with psychic power, as if hitting the ground like a meteorite. This kind of power is obviously not something that Iceman can withstand. But, in the end, how did this guy completely disappear the ice world just now? This is an unsolved mystery. It was supposed to cool down rapidly, and when it was about to drop below absolute zero, or even to freeze molecules, when it completely penetrated and imposed the molecular level of the entire reality, an unknown mysterious force completely wiped out everything. The answer is obviously simple too. Is the power to tamper with reality. Played well. Su Chen said. It has to be said that Iceman's performance exceeded his expectations. The movie version of Iceman did not show the power of Omega. And the Iceman in the universe in front of him is much stronger. If he didn't tamper with reality, a small piece of time and space in front of him might really be frozen by Iceman. But it's still a long way off. Before that, he hadn't even caused his spiritual energy to run wild, that is, he hadn't felt any real threat to his life. After the first battle, Su Chen, who had initially understood the ability to tamper with reality, also successfully interfered with the freeze imposed by the opponent on the molecule. Are you all right? At the gate of the training ground, the beast McCoy, who hurried over, looked worried. He did not expect that the holographic simulation system in the entire training room would stop running, and he did not expect that he had just left for a while, and the battle inside was so intense. He flipped the other side alone, Steely said helplessly.
Although realistically, Su Chen only beat 3 people, but the remaining 2 students have limited strength. It is estimated that Su Chen's hands and feet are tied up, and his mental thoughts are not revealed. These 2 people are not enough.
So it was automatically ignored intentionally or unintentionally. Beast. It looks like you missed a good show, a real Omega contest. In desperation, everyone, including Colossus, was very excited. This was the first time they had witnessed an Omega-level contest in the true sense. This brief collision alone is no less than a final in the Super Bowl. This. The beast McCoy looked at Su Chen, and then at the Iceman who was struggling to the ground and supported by his teammates, but he didn't know what to say. To be honest, even the boy he brought back would have such terrifying potential after 3 months. Soon. Battles about this training session spread throughout the Xavier Academy for gifted boys. The real deal, 2 Omega-level fights, and this is based on Su Chen's 1 vs 5 situation. Hey, the day Bird and I were not beaten. Haha, that's because you don't dare to go up, not to mention that it doesn't make any difference whether you go up or not. Someone mercilessly exposed his face. It seems that defeating the Brotherhood of Mutants is also true. The Burning Man can be regarded as shooting himself in the foot. I heard that people deliberately asked him to settle accounts. Before that, no one had seen Su Chen's fighting style, only heard of his explosive talent. Now that the first hand has been revealed, some doubts have long been extinguished. Damn bastard. John the Burning Man, who woke up in the school doctor's room, also heard about the experience behind him. After being swept up into the air by the storm and then fell down, he has passed out. Now that I woke up and heard Su Chen's outstanding military exploits and his embarrassed performance, I suddenly felt extremely angry. And also, what's up with Poppy the Iceman? He hated Su Chen a little bit. But when he heard that the defeated general of his past suddenly showed unprecedented power, he felt a little sour and depressed. Omega class again. Is the stage of Dare to Love the World reserved for these proud sons? The more he thought about it, the more angry John became, and he felt that he might as well go into a coma. Principal room. Professor Charles was in a wheelchair, and his eyes looked through the classical hollow wooden windows to the fountain pool outside. Chin. How is his psychological assessment? It's really normal, just like ordinary people. Chin Ge Lei responded. Omega level, super powerful, genius in the spiritual realm. These elements are a little familiar to me, but also intimidating. Professor Charles specifically asked about Su Chen's psychological report without any prejudice. It was something from the past that made him a little uneasy. At this moment, he was even a little lonely, and his old face suddenly seemed to have a lot of wrinkles. Chin Gray sighed inexplicably. When she first came to the college as a child, she naturally remembered that the professor had a son. Talented, completely inherited Professor X's ability and intelligence. It's a pity that in the end, it completely deviated from the track and completely lost control of the spirit. In the end, more than 10 years have passed, the academy has completely disappeared from him, and Professor X has never mentioned anything about him again, as if he did not exist at all in the past. Mind-blowing runaway. Like a curse for people like them. This is also what Chin Ge Lei worries about Su Chen the most. But for now, he's different, the professor doesn't have to worry. As for the purposeful attack on John the Burning Man, it was also caused by his maliciously spreading rumors before. It was nothing more than a collision between teenagers. After Professor Charles heard Chin's words, he was silent for a while. In the end, no punishment was given for this fight that broke through the regular training. When John the Burning Man found out, he was even more annoyed. After the second runaway, Su Chen has been pondering how to activate the ability of tampering with reality and realization of fantasy in normalization. These are all supernormal abilities that erupt when the spirit is rampant. Just ask the Scarlet Witch Wanda can't kill most of the mutants in normal times. So in general, it is really difficult for Su Chen to use these two abilities stably. But during the battle with Iceman, I didn't expect that when I felt the opponent trying to freeze, Omega-level ghosts activated the ability to tamper with reality. At that time, I had no sorrow and no joy, and was very serious, as if I had entered the realm of the zone. It doesn't seem to be fruitless. Su Chen has no system, so he has to explore on his own. Certainly, he has other gains. The next day. Wake up. He found that his infinitely evolved genes gave him new abilities. It's fire. Swish. I saw a flame jumping out from the tip of Su Chen's index finger. Release the fire, and control the fire, Su Chen exclaimed. And my body feels a lot warmer and better. After a little thought, he understood why. The country of ice created by Iceman Poppy yesterday was too cold, and the temperature even made a sturdy man like Colossus a little unbearable. If the little black brother of the mutant Darwin was in such an environment, there is no need to think that thick fur will inevitably evolve on the body surface to prevent his body temperature from rapidly passing. Su Chen put himself in his shoes and thought for a while. Perhaps it was the cold weather yesterday that stimulated his genes and cells that were different from ordinary people, so that he quickly transformed into a cold-resistant gene. Not just adaptation, but also the ability to evolve restraint. That's the flame. Su Chen smiled. If he remembered correctly, John the Fireman can only control fire, but cannot create fire, so attacking others in advance requires some preparation in advance, and he always has a lighter on his body. But now, John's dream-making ability to make fire is within his grasp. Su Chen's heart also returned to his youth. In the cafeteria after class, Su Chen deliberately showed off this new ability in front of John the Burning Man. When he saw that there was a flame out of nowhere in Su Chen's palm, John the Burning Man immediately changed his face. He still has the ability. Exasperated, he couldn't stand the lively gazes around him, so after falling off the bowl, he immediately flew back to his dormitory, leaving behind a string of Su Chen's hearty laughter. Also on this day, Jean Grey and the professor attended the first congressional hearing on mutants. There is still debate about the Mutant Registration Act. Not long ago, Chin Ge Lei also gave a speech on the stage as a representative. In general, it takes a long time for Congress to make detailed changes to pass a bill, especially when it comes to such a large and lethal mutant. Su Chen was noncommittal. To be honest, if he were Professor Charles, a direct mental invasion would wipe out all relevant memories and it would be over. It still takes so long to talk to these high-level humans. In his opinion, Professor X is still too abiding by the rules of the social order, and is not willing to break the rules. As for why, the reason is simple. Professor X himself was born in the second generation of the super rich. After his parents died, he inherited a large manor and his family was rich. Therefore, he cherishes all the current order, and strives to build a bridge for communication between mutants and human beings, and jointly create a future world where they live in harmony. And what about Magneto? A low-level child who grew up in a concentration camp in World War E has been disappointed with the world since childhood. Now he has experienced the disturbance of mutant discrimination, so now he is stubborn to take action against the national parliament. How can people who have been drenched in darkness since childhood, how can their hearts turn to the light? The positions of the two can be said to be diametrically opposed, so the collision of ideas is so incompatible, and the X-Men have repeatedly smashed the actions of the Brotherhood. And so, it gives people a sense of being too virgin and too terrorist. As for Su Chen's own position, it's simple. You come and beat me, I'll beat you to death, it doesn't matter who you are. And soon, even he himself did not expect that a crisis began to erupt around him. The same day, House of Representatives. A file appeared on the desk of a congressman's office. What? He was very puzzled why there was an additional file suddenly, but driven by curiosity, he still opened the file. After the contents were opened, there was a videotape and a document. Soon, Congressman Kelly, who pushed for the mutant registration bill, looked splendid. These mutants even concealed such a major social crisis. The video shows footage of the Queens Community School, and the footage shows people in multiple classrooms and churches all in a coma. In a long 1 or 2 minutes, there are hundreds of people in a rough count. The information in the file is also artificially written about what happened. A teenage mutant broke out of control, causing hundreds of teachers and students to fall into a brief coma. Professor X Charles deliberately concealed this major social event. In addition, there is a personal information of the teenager. Ha ha ha. This time, when I dozed off, someone brought pillows. The dossier alone is enough to keep these mutants involved. Very good. Immediately call someone and have the office come up with a wanted list, which is the boy in this profile. It's a good show. In a dimly lit basement, the figure of the night girl Callisto appeared, and she watched the TV screen contentedly. I can't imagine that hundreds of teachers and students are still in a collective coma in today's society. The cause of the incident is that the ability of a young mutant suddenly broke out of control. What I can't even imagine is that the whole thing was concealed unknowingly. The person behind it remains at large and is currently investigating whether there were any real casualties. The lens screen switches again. This time, I came to Congressman Kelly's personal interview. The congressman who has been promoting the mutant registration bill immediately started talking nonstop. It turns out that we simply can't ignore the harm mutants do to society. You can imagine that a mutant who lost control can cause so many people to fall into a coma, and you can imagine that there are mutants who can erase the memories of these victims with one hand. And all of this has actually happened. We need the Mutant Registration Act, register them one by one, and investigate their harm. All harmful beings are imprisoned. And the X-Men need an explanation for this incident. At this moment, MP Kelly reiterated his bill and raised his fist. Very good. Callisto the Nightmare smiled. Satisfied, she turned off the TV. That's right. All of this was led by her. After the outbreak of the community school that day went out of control, she saw that most of the surveillance video had been damaged, so she directly carried a DV video for photography. The original intention was just to make Magneto pay more attention to this young man. In fact, Magneto also became interested in this young man after watching the photography-related clips, and sent out his able-bodied red tan per gram. The result was such a disastrous ending. One plan does not make another plan. Seeing that the X-Men led by Professor X Charles has repeatedly opposed the Brotherhood of Mutants, and even tried to act as a bridge between humans and mutants, then let this bridge collapse first. The same moment. Xavier Academy for Gifted Boys. Every student felt extremely stunned. They didn't expect that one day they would become the target of public criticism. Damn. If it wasn't for Su Chen, our academy wouldn't have become so embarrassed all of a sudden. Cyclops Scott said grumblingly. The X-Men is the #1 superhero group that is well known, and has always strived to build a world that lives in harmony with humans, so it has always been good in human prestige. But now, Professor X was dragged into the water because of Su Chen, but it was a little troublesome. However, there is a mind that dominates Charlestown. As long as Magneto doesn't come forward in person, these arrogant X-Men are just complaining and don't worry too much. Although Professor Charles is kind, he is not so pedantic enough to give up his force and let others be slaughtered. If this is the case, he will not insist on developing the X-Men, nor will he strive to develop the latest black technology. Moreover, as the most valuable brain of all human beings on Earth, if they disagree with one word, they can even obliterate the terrifying existence of global human consciousness. Even within S.H.I.E.L.D., Magneto, the leader of the Brotherhood, can only be ranked behind Charles in terms of threat. So, this official report may be just a knock, but the real purpose is to find trouble with Su Chen. Beast McCoy said with great certainty. He has always been in contact with the official agency, otherwise he would not be the minister of the official Mutant Affairs Department in the future, so he also guessed the intention of Congressman Kelly. What's more, did they still dare to cause trouble to Charles in front of the great enemy of Magneto? With that being said, everyone's ideas come through. Their X-Men and mutant academies are absolutely safe. The problem is Su Chen, he's gone. At this time, Aurora, the Storm Girl, brought a message. Her face was a little lonely. In her opinion, the fault was not his. Count him acquainted, so as not to continue to drag us down. Scott was a little rude. Did you forget that when you awakened your ability, you almost cut a building in half? Didn't Professor X donate a building to settle this matter? Storm couldn't help dismantling the stage. This time, the laser eye on the top couldn't say a word. However, there was still a hint of happiness on his face. At least this kid doesn't have to continue to be in the academy, and Chin doesn't have to stay by his side, giving him regular psychological evaluations. Where's the piano? At this moment, Cyclops Scott was immediately concerned about the whereabouts of Chin Gray, and she was the only one missing from the X-Men on the field. Go after him. The Storm Girl was naturally aware of Cyclops' thoughts, so she couldn't help but add, the Phoenix Girl doesn't accept it, and insists on bringing him back. Su Chen did leave the Mutant Academy. Before that, he didn't have too many thoughts of leaving, because the environment was comfortable, he didn't have to worry about food and clothing himself, and he had the top scientific research materials and technologies for his own study and reference. But things that I had been worried about in the past suddenly broke out, and I was suddenly wanted. Will he implicate us? When he heard such a sentence in the academy, Su Chen sighed silently, and he didn't feel any blame for it. Because he actually heard those words from a 7 or 8-year-old mutant kid. Tong Yan Wuji, why to blame? He is not so irresponsible, so he doesn't plan to live in the academy anymore. The reason for accepting Professor X's olive branch before was nothing more than the helplessness after the first out-of-control outbreak, and the feeling of confusion in the world not long after passing through. Now, self-protection is more than enough, and it is time to leave. Night Lady. Su Chen clenched his fist slightly, and the anger in his heart rose up at this moment. He knew who was behind the scenes. When I met the Night Girl before, I knew clearly that this woman had mastered her initial movements and understood what happened at the Queen's Community School. Now, she must have put herself together, so. After leaving the academy, Su Chen made it clear that the first purpose was to find the Night Girl. But the development of things is not as optimistic as the X-Men, including Su Chen. When Professor X Charles tried to figure out the ins and outs and deliberately persuaded Su Chen back, he rushed to the brainwave instrument room for the first time. After connecting the brainwave intensifier, Charles's consciousness will be able to cover more than half of the Earth. But not long after the instrument helmet was put on his head, a sudden pain emerged from the brain. Someone is hurting him secretly. As soon as this consciousness arose, Professor Charles lost his will and fell from the wheelchair. Professor X was attacked. No one thought that something happened to Professor X Charles. Someone replaced the energy source of the brainwave machine, and the moment when the telepathy was connected, it directly caused a great mental shock to the professor. The professor who fell from the wheelchair in front of him had a concussion and lost consciousness. If it weren't for the faint fluctuation of life, everyone thought that the other party had died. Damn. What's going on here? The brainwave machine doesn't even have access to the X-Men. Only a few people such as Professor X have permission to enter the metal valve that is strong enough to resist the impact of a nuclear explosion. It's Mystique. She must have been here. At this moment, Beast McCoy gritted his teeth and said with great certainty. Only she can obtain Professor X's life characteristics, pupil and iris, sneak in without knowing it, and familiarize herself with the structure of this brainwave machine, replacing it with key energy. After all, Mystique was also one of the elders who first founded the academy, but in the end it backfired and she left with Magneto. This woman. The Beast did not expect that the two sides who were strangers would kill each other. Immediately dismiss students who were eligible to go home, and prepare for a first-level alert. Losing Professor X, Charles, is like a tiger losing its fangs, a country losing its most powerful weapon of deterrence. Just thinking about it carefully, you know that things are going bad. Absurd. A very absurd conjecture has surfaced in the minds of many X-Men. The official organization has joined forces with the Brotherhood of Mutants to engage them? When the mutant students' alarm sounded, everyone's mood became a little complicated. Even Storm and others did not expect that this pure land was about to usher in an enemy invasion. As soon as this idea came up, with a bang, the window of the manor was completely smashed by an outside object, and the fine sound of the propeller turning came from midair. It's over. The expected enemy came faster than they thought. It was at this moment that the Xavier Talented Boys Academy was invaded for the first time. Su Chen, who left the academy, has left Westchester County. It was late at this time, and taking the cool breeze, he returned to Queens. This famous area has seen many superheroes, the most famous of which is Spider-Man. Su Chen didn't plan to look for this talker either. The purpose of this trip was to go to the underground black market, find some stray mutant groups, and find the location of the Night Girl. If you want to ask them one by one, you may want to ask about the year of the monkey and the month of the horse. But Su Chen himself is a leader in the field of spirituality, and among his first awakening abilities, mind reading is included. Hey kid, this is not where you can come. After the financial turmoil, many unfinished buildings emerged in this poor area of Queens. Every night, many people gathered near these decaying and backward buildings. Nearly 100% of people will smuggle underground, sell weapons, etc., and even smuggle body organs. Seeing a young man with an unfamiliar face breaking in, some people immediately started booing. Let him in, tender skin. As soon as the words fell, the guy who picked up the pocket pistol immediately wrapped his hands around his neck tightly. He can't breathe. An invisible hand not only wrapped around his neck, but even lifted his figure. What? Like a drowning person, his feet stomped off the ground desperately in the air. Depend on. At this time, the individual who had been shouting just now escaped in a panic, leaving only one or two confused addicts lying on the ground, not caring what happened at all. When the rude person lost his struggle in midair, Su Chen's figure had already entered the underground black market. The mind-reading technique allowed him to search the surrounding information without hesitation, and soon, he locked on a member of an underground wandering mutant group. Just as he took another step and walked down the steps. At the far back entrance, there are actually many dense steps. If it weren't for his sensitive hearing ability, Su Chen wouldn't have found that his way back was blocked by so many people. At this moment, Su Chen didn't even have a sense of crisis, nothing like the helplessness and confusion after losing control for the first time. Shouldn't run to mess with me, Su Chen said coldly. After being suddenly wanted, he was already dissatisfied with his emotions. Being in such an underground black market, the dark pictures he saw in the process of reading his mind made him soaked in a lot of negative emotions. Even Su Chen didn't realize that his terrifying negative emotions had permeated his body, forming a faint wave of reality. The target has been set. Under the arrangement of satellite remote sensing and roadside video surveillance to capture personal information, some military personnel tracked Su Chen's real-time dynamic information throughout the entire process. The target is very dangerous. Suspected as a mutant in the highly spiritual realm, good at telepathy, telekinesis, etc. The good news is that he walked into the underground black market alone, which gave us the advantage of the terrain. 2 armored vehicles outside several streets have become a temporary command room. They collected information from all over the place, and locked and judged the situation of the target person who was just wanted. These people in front of them are soldiers under General Stryker. For mutants, among the 3 most hated human beings, in addition to Senator Kelly, who is dedicated to promoting the mutant registration bill, none belongs to General Stryker, who has violent armed forces. This is a military figure who hates mutants deeply. According to the widely circulated Academy legend, there are many dark research institutions under this guy, and many mutants are imprisoned for his research. Go! Seeing that the time has come, a clear order has been issued. A war is about to break out.